virus. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I figured that in the light of Valentine's Day, I wanted to talk about my favorite romances, but not my favorite just romances, but like my favorite love stories, because some of these books don't really fall into the category of like romance, and you'll see what I mean when I talk about it. But yeah, I just figured I would share some of my favorite romances today. Okay, the first one that I want to talk about is actually it's actually a fanfic, so if you don't want to, like, if you're not interested in fanfic, or if for whatever reason, I will put the timestamp of when I stop talking about this book, but it is a Hermione fanfic, as that is kind of my jam, and it's called Remain Nameless by Hey Jude, and it's available on AO3. This is a longer fanfic, I do want to warn you, but I absolutely fell in love with this story last year when I read it. It was one of my favorite books of the year, and I know it's kind of I consider fanfic as books, but whatever. Obviously, this is a story about Draco and Hermione from Harry Potter. So basically, this story is following after the Battle of Hogwarts, and it's been a few years, and we're following Draco and the trauma that is following him after the events of Harry Potter, and basically just his father, who really is not a great dude, of the things that he had to do in the war. He also is having the trauma of like seeing Hermione being hurt by Bellatrix and not doing anything about it, and he's like really become reclusive. He doesn't really talk to his mom that much. I mean, he sees her, but it's very, broken. But he just he has to go to therapy, and it's just really following that timeline of just the trauma that he's going through. And then we're also following Hermione, and she is not with Ron anymore. They decided to split. Like, they came to terms, like, they both agreed to it. It was a friendly split. They still hang out with each other, and so we're also following Hermione, but they end up running into each other in a coffee shop, because Draco is like he's like always goes to this coffee shop like every day at the same time, and he decides to go earlier because I believe he can't sleep. And he ends up running into Hermione, and Hermione is sitting at his table that he always sits at, and he thinks that Hermione is like trying to mess with him because for whatever reason he thinks that she knows where he happens to sit every day, and so he goes up and confronts her, and then the story just takes off from there. And it was a really cute story. I really enjoyed how they discussed the trauma behind what happened in Hogwarts, because in Harry Potter, I mean, because I understand that Harry Potter is a children's book, but it has a lot of dark things that happen. There's a lot of traumatizing things that happen in the series, and I really like that they explore not just Draco and Hermione, but there's also Harry and Ginny, and there's Ron's family that's also in there, and also Ron, and I just really like that we're exploring all the different facets of how these people are faring years after the Battle of Hogwarts, and how it's affected people, and how I just really like the realistic representation. I thought that this was a very realistic book. I liked the way that the characters were written. I liked that it wasn't just, I liked the fact that there was trauma that like, I don't want this to sound weird, but I like the fact that Draco wasn't just written as like this pompous jerk like he was in Harry Potter. I like that he was kind of made more, he just was more, it just seemed realistic that after everything that he did, because a lot of the things that he had to do in Harry Potter, he didn't, like, towards the end, he didn't want to do those things. A lot of it was pressure, because, like, his father was a Death Eater. He became a Death Eater, and he thought that that's what he needed to do, and then he realizes, especially during the 6th book, and then going into 7th, that he's like, this is not good. This is not what I should be doing. And again, like, a really big part of this book is that he's dealing with the trauma that he didn't help Hermione when Bellatrix was torturing her, and really thinks that he doesn't deserve Hermione. Like, he thinks that he's like no chance with her. And I just really like how this story was handled, and I really liked how it wasn't just like, because I read some other Hermione fics, and they're just or Harry Potter fanfics, and they're kind of just like really giving Ron a hard time, and I liked how this was still, everybody from the story was involved without it being like someone was hated or someone was like pushed out. I just like the very realistic of how like Hermione goes and still sees all of the Weasleys, even though they're not together, because she is family, and how like just them being together doesn't mean that, like, even though they're not together anymore, it doesn't mean that she stops being part of their family. And I just really liked it. And I also liked how Ginny and Harry, they go out on a double date with Draco and Hermione, and of course Harry's kind of like apprehensive because of all the things that Draco went through, but Ginny's just like rooting for them, and they end up like kind of spying on them a little bit from the bushes outside, and it's just really fun. And I just really like this book. And again, if you like fanfics and you haven't read this one's a very popular one. I would definitely suggest reading this one because it's really, really wholesome, and I really liked it. It did have some spice in it, but honestly, I didn't really think that it had that much spice in it, but I just really liked there was a really good balance of romance, of just seeing like these two, of seeing individuals really blossom and grow, and seeing their own personal stories and what they're going through, on top of like spice, and also there was action, and I just really liked it, and I liked the blend of everything. So the next book that I want to talk about is going to be In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. My favorite book from T.J. Klune is The House of Cerulean Sea, and that one also has a really good romance story, but I chose this one because when I read this book, so this is a Pinocchio retelling, and basically the premise of this book, basically this is a Pinocchio retelling, but basically Vic, who is like the main character, is the only human in this world that like this book is set in, and that's like a really big thing because robots have taken over basically, and they basically run everything. He has two companions other than his father, Giovanni, who raised him, a like nurse. She's technically like a machine, but she's a nurse, and her name is Nurse Ratched. And then there is a vacuum who would be the closest resemblance to a Roomba, like just a Roomba that I believe was kind of reconstructed a little bit by him, and his name Rambo. His name is Rambo, which again is really close to a Roomba, but he would be the closest thing to like a Roomba. And basically this story kicks off because he goes in and he like always scavenges this junkyard that is near where they live in like this treehouse situation, and he goes and he basically finds this robot who is still like alive, and Vic ends up taking him back to his home so that way he can like re-put him together. Like he fixes him, and then his father Giovanni ends up getting taken by people, and then Vic, Rambo, Nurse Ratched, and this robot that he puts together that he names Hap, they end up going and hunting down his dad to bring him back home. And through the reason why I really like this book, because again, this would not classify as in the romance, like it's not a romance book, but it's like, I think it would be more aligned with like science fiction, fantasy. But there is a really unexpected romance that happens between Vic and Hap, and I really enjoyed it because it was really not the stereotypical like where, you know, there's like a mute cute and this and that. Like I really like it because Vic, the main character, I think he would be considered as asexual, so he doesn't have any really like sexual feelings towards people, but I believe he still has romantic feelings, or he is capable of having romantic feelings, and he ends up having a thing for Hap. And I think that it's so cute because it's like a human and a robot, but it's not in the stereotypical, like a lot of romances that I read where it's like, you know, there's that physical attraction. Hap, because he's a robot and he's technically incapable of love, he, you know, starts developing these feelings for Vic that he's like, I don't know if I should be having these feelings. These are not normal feelings. I'm not supposed to be feeling things. And I really like that because Vic is also like, he's never met, like the only people that he's had in his life are his father and, you know, his two like robot companions. So he's never really had like a chance to fall in love with somebody. And I really like this story, and their adventures, and seeing Hap like basically become more humanistic even though he's a robot, and seeing them, you know, not just become friends but really relying on each other. And it's a really cute story, and again, it's a really unexpected romance, or at least in my opinion it was an unexpected romance, and I just thought it was really cute. And so if you haven't read In the Lives of Puppets, I would definitely recommend reading this one. I know this one was a little bit all over the place in terms of like telling you about it, but believe me when I say that it's worth the ride. It gives a lot of introspection. It makes you think about things and how our world is now and how different it could be. And, just the thought of the fact that, like, that we don't have humans anymore and that robots kind of, have taken over like, the way that the romance was written, because it wasn't overly, like, super romantic. It was just like I thought it was a very natural development of a relationship between two individuals that didn't really expect to have feelings for each other. And again, it was just a really natural development. The next book that I want to talk about, I've been talking about this one a lot, but I'm going to talk about it again. And of course, it's Heartstopper. It's a graphic novel. I read all of them. Again, I've talked about this one a lot, so I'm not going to talk about this one too much, but this is basically about Charlie, and he's a teenager in high school who also likes boys, but he was outed, not by his own accord. It somehow got out, and then, it got spread around school, and he got bullied and everything. And so he's, like, outed, and he comes across Nick, and they develop a friendship that eventually turns into more. And I just really like this because it is a romance that if you want a breath of fresh air, this is the one. If you want something that's going to make you feel just like giddy inside, I just really also like it because, again, as you can tell, I really like realistic romances. I like characters that are written in a realistic human way, and I feel like all of these characters are written that way. I feel like the way that Nick, because when Nick starts his relationship with Charlie, he's straight, or he thinks he's straight, and I just really like how Nick is handling it, like how he's the internal debate that he's having with himself and why he has these feelings and what they mean, and that he's not just like, oh yeah, I like this person, that's fine, that there's a lot more that goes into it when you realize that you may have feelings for not just someone that you didn't expect it, but someone who is of the same sex, and especially when you've been, a specific sexuality your entire life, basically. And I just really like also Charlie is supportive and how Nick is supportive, and just how I just really liked it. And I also, my husband, because again, it is Valentine's Day, he got me the Heartstopper coloring book for Valentine's Day, and so I'm so excited to listen to an audiobook and color this. And I'm just in love with this. I've been wanting this one, and I was excited when I saw this in Target, so I'm really happy that he got this for me. He also got me coloring pencils because I didn't have any, so I'm really excited to go through and, like, relive, Heartstopper and, color through some of the pages, and it just would be a cute thing. Netflix series, if you do have that, is really good, and I feel like it sticks pretty true to the story. Obviously, there's some other things that are thrown in because obviously they're probably going to change some things, but I thought it was a very realistic representation of the book, so I would definitely recommend. And of course, they're graphic novels, so they're pretty short reads. You can read them pretty quickly. So the next book that I want to talk about is one that I literally finished not yesterday, but the day before, but it has quickly become one that I'm obsessed with, and it is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is a hockey sports romance, and this was on my TBR for the month, so I'm glad that I read it. To say that I'm pleasantly surprised by how much I like this book is an understatement, because I expected to go in and, from the beginning I was liking it, so I was expecting to, enjoy my time. But I tell you how, once I actually sat down and read this, I read through this so quickly, and I just absolutely fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the romance. I fell in love with the main characters. I fell in love with the drama that was happening around, like, this school, which drama in terms of, like, things not going right with, like, the hockey team, or with things not going right in Hannah's, like, classes, because, like, they're coming up on their senior year, so a lot of, like, end of like, their big projects are coming due, for them to be able to get scholarships and such as that. And I was enveloped the entire time, and anybody who knows me knows that I have no connection with sports whatsoever. I am not a sports person. I don't watch sports. I think the closest thing to sports that I'll do is I, like, used to play those hockey video games with my dad when I was younger, and I think it was more as an excuse for me and him to, like, beat each other up in the video game. But I am not, like, a sports person, so the fact that I wanted to read this was shocking. My husband was like, okay, I guess you'll read a hockey romance, and I absolutely love Garrett Graham. I thought that he was such a good main character. I liked, he wasn't like the stereotypical douchebag, but he was like a guy. He was like a college dude who, like, didn't sweep Hannah off her feet. He didn't, like, come in here and, like, he was charming, but he wasn't like this, like, all of a sudden he's like this great guy, which I feel like sometimes romances fall into that where it's like, wow, this like 20-year-old is like this most romantic person and this and that, and like Garrett is not like that, but he is such, I loved his character and how much he ended up caring for Hannah. Like they ended up, like the whole point of this book is that Garrett is in danger of failing like an ethics exam, and so he sees that Hannah is one of the few people in the class that got an A+, so he was like basically bombards her until she agrees to tutor him. And then from there, just, you know, they end up spending a lot of time together, and then like feelings develop, and I just really like the way that they also handled when the feelings develop. Trigger warning, there are mentions and explorations in trauma involving being taken advantage of, and also of like abuse from a parent, and so I do want to put that out there, that if that is something that you are sensitive to please go into this lightly, because there is mentions of it quite a bit, and like I do like the way that that is also handled, and I like the way that it is explored for Hannah and how that situation of her being taken advantage of has affected her like relationships in terms of sex, because she finds that she's not very comfortable with men, which understandably. I thought that it was realistic in the sense that they talked about, like there's this part, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, but Hannah has a moment where she's like, you know, you're trying to, and it's been a few years since that happened to her, but she's trying to bounce back, and she comes back, and she's, you know, going to college. She's had a few relationships, but they've been rocky because of, you know, the way that it has affected her overall sexual being, I guess is the best way to put it. And she has a moment where she ends up asking Garrett, because she basically finds that she can't finish with another guy, like she's never been able to, and she basically asks Garrett to sleep with her to see if she can even, you know, achieve an orgasm with a guy. And I really like Garrett isn't immediately like, oh yeah, he's like, why are we doing this, like you're my tutor, like he has feelings for her, but he's like, wait a minute, why are we doing this, there's more to the story and this and that. And I like how it wasn't just like, oh yeah, sure, like let's do it, like let's have sex. And she has this moment where she like breaks down to Garrett, and she's like, I'm broken. And obviously any person who's been through that, they are not broken by any means. Like I don't want, like, was really heart-wrenching that she feels like that, but I understand why she feels like that. And I really like how it wasn't just like, oh yeah, like no, it's fine, I'm moving on. It's like, this is something that has still followed me for years, or followed her for years. I also really like Garrett's response, because like he basically treats Hannah as if she's like never slept with anybody, which she's by no means a virgin, like she slept with other people, but he ends up asking another person on his hockey team like suggestions, like if I were to want to sleep with somebody who's never, you know, had sex before, what would I do? Because he basically wants to start from like the very beginning with Hannah, and like make sure that she's as comfortable as she can be with him intimately. And I just really like that he was like actually taking it seriously. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we're just gonna have sex and it'll be fine. And like the first time that they attempt to do anything, Hannah's having a hard time, and I like how Garrett just wasn't like taking offense to it. He like was just like, okay, let's switch tactics, like what else can we do? And I liked that, and I liked that it wasn't just like, oh, my ego's hurt because you can't do this, and I just really enjoyed that. And again, I really liked Garrett. I thought that he was honestly a really wholesome dude, in my opinion. I thought this was a very surprising read, if I'm gonna be real honest here, and I just really enjoyed it. The next book that I want to talk about is, of course, an Emily Henry read, and it is Beach Read. And this, I've only read 2 Emily Henry books, but this one out of the 2 is my favorite, and I read through this one really fast. I sat down and read this one in almost like one go, and it is about January, who is like a hopeless romantic, but when her father dies, she basically finds out that her dad was having an affair, like for a very long time, and it's basically made it to where she doesn't believe in romance anymore, and so she ends up going to his beach house, her dad's beach house that he shared with his, like, he was having an affair. I know there's the word for it, but I can't think of it right now. And she ends up being next door neighbors to her, like, academic rival Gus, who, like, went to college with her, who was also both, like, successful authors. And so Gus is out there, like, he, like, lives there, and he's working on his next book, and they end up, you know, again, crossing paths, but they end up making a deal to where, like, they're gonna take the summer and write basically each other's genre. So she's gonna write what Gus normally writes, which is like, who, like, writes I guess it would be like thriller suspense, and he writes a lot of things. Like during the book, he's like basically researching. He goes and researches a cult because he's writing a book about cults and how, you know, people. He's just writing about that, and then Gus is basically going to write a romance while he's like when they switch, and then they're gonna basically the deal is like whoever gets their book, you know, the publishing rights first is going to win. And I really like Emily Henry's books, the two that I've read, because I like how it's not just the story between the main like two couples like Gus and January. It's also a discussion of her dad's affair, and also like there's a lot of discussion about the things that Gus went through when he was younger, and also about like January's mom has gone through cancer. And I just really like how her books are not just romance. It's like there's a lot of other dynamics that are thrown in there, like family dynamics and friendship dynamics, and I just really like her books, and I really like how this couple, it would be an enemies to lovers if it would fall under anything. And I just really like the way that Gus and January like develop a relationship. I like how it's, in my opinion, it's slow burn, but I like how it's just like a natural progression of how a relationship would progress. Like they end up, because they can see each other like from their balcony and from like the kitchen window, so they like start writing like total the Taylor Swift You Belong With Me music video where they're writing notes on like the notepad. That's exactly what they do, and they eventually start texting, and then they just start spending a lot of time together because like they basically take each other out on specific days of the week to go and do research for them in like what they would normally do. And I just really like the aspect of like making somebody really go out of their comfort zone and write and explore a topic that's really not what they're used to. And I like that through that they really learned more about each other. And I just really also liked Gus as a character. I liked how he was with January. I liked how January was with Gus. I liked her as a main female character. I just like how like there's also the like her dad has died, but she's really struggling with the fact that she's saddened because her dad died, and she has all these memories, but then finding out afterwards that he's had an affair like for a long time. It makes it very, her feelings are really back and forth, and I understand why that would be. And I just, again, I like how it's not just like, oh, my dad died. It's like I'm dealing with my dad's death, but also learning that maybe he's not the person that I always thought that he was. And I just really liked it, and I know that this book did make me cry at one point, and I just thought that this was a really, even though it handled really heavy topics, I just really liked how it was handled, and I liked these two characters together, and I thought that they had really good chemistry, and they made me laugh, and I just really liked the concept of the book. The next book that I want to talk, we only have two more, The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I also read The 7-Year Slip and absolutely loved it, but this, why is there no, oh, I know why this, I don't know why I put a love note that my husband wrote to me in this, but I did. Anyways, so... I really like this book. It has like almost like a sense of it is kind of, I would consider it a magical realism plot, and basically what is explain this right. So this is about a ghostwriter named Florence Day. She's a ghostwriter for a very big author named Ann Nichols, and she goes in to talk to the editor slash publisher. I think he's an editor. She ends up going and talking to him about getting an extension, or she's just having a trouble writing, you know, a book. And his name is Benji Andor, and they end up kind of getting off on the wrong foot. You know, she ends up very quickly after they get off on the wrong foot, and he's like, we need to have this novel done. She ends up getting a call from her father, or from her mother, that her father had a heart attack and he's passed away, so she immediately goes to her hometown. But the catch is that Florence has always been able to see ghosts, and I know it sounds a little weird, but she's always been able to see ghosts. So she goes to her hometown, and like I believe the night that she arrives, she ends up seeing Benji as a ghost in her front door, and you know, he shows up and he's like, oh my god, I'm here, and then he disappears, and that's when she realizes that he's a ghost. But she keeps seeing him, and it, like, again, they end up, you know, creating a relationship or learning more about each other from there. And so, like I said, there's a really weird aspect in the sense that she can see ghosts, but I really like that because I do like magical realism. I like how that little tidbit thrown in, because other than that, it's, like, realistic, but it's not just him that she can see other ghosts. Like, there's this older couple who melted my heart when I read this. Like, there's an older couple, and one of them had passed away, and they get flowers sent to their significant other, and you see basically like the ghost of the other one just like sitting there waiting to see them get their like flowers, and it's so cute. And it's really sad too, because like they're just waiting for their, you know, their soulmate to, you know, come with them. I don't want this to sound morbid, but it's just, I really liked, again, the same thing like I like about Beach Read is that this wasn't just a book about romance. It's also about, it's a book about Florence dealing with the death of her father that she's very close to, and dealing with the, like, she doesn't have anything against her family, but seeing how seeing her with family members that she might not always get along with, or that she doesn't understand why all of a sudden they don't get along together, and why there's a straining in their relationship. And then you're also dealing with Benji, dealing with the fact that, you know, he's a ghost, and what happened and what's going on and what he remembered. And then she's also dealing with the fact that she can't finish writing this book. She doesn't know how to finish it, and especially like the death of her father is making it harder to write this book. And I just really like this. Like, this has been compared to, like, if you loved Casper, the like live action movie with Christina Ricci, which I cannot tell you how many times I watched that movie. It was on repeat. My sisters hated it, but it was my favorite movie. And this kind of gives that Casper, like adult Casper vibes. I just really, really liked it, of just like the fact that, like, and she even has a moment that, like, oh shit, what do you start doing when you start having feelings for a ghost? Like of course, out of all, like, her luck, she would. And I just really, really liked, this was a very wholesome book. It made me cry. And it was, also, I did read this one, I listened to most of it as an audiobook on Audible, and it was the person who narrated it, that I don't know the name of, did a freaking fantastic job. She did so good narrating it. She had a lot of humor behind, because Florence is a very, like, funny character, and I liked the personality that she put into Florence and all the other characters, and I just really liked this book, and the way that she narrated it made me cry, I think, was part of it. Also, I'm sorry if you can hear my cats, they're running around and creating a ruckus. So, and then the last book, which I would have to say is probably my favorite book, which, are we all shocked this one is gonna be on my top one, and it's There Free Fall at Last by Julia Olivia. This book has, like, not just me in a chokehold, but has me just thinking about all the time. This book is so good. So it's basically, so it's the last book in the Honeywood Fun Park series, and it follows, like, the different couples within this, like, friend group. And this one is about Bennett Shaw and his best friend that he grew up with. So this is about Bennett and Ruby, and basically it follows the story of them becoming best friends when they were really young, and them just being by each other's side. And this book will put you through, like, the biggest heartache, but also the biggest, like, giddy, oh my god, I can't stop kicking my feet romance. It made me cry. It made me, like, I'm pretty sure I threw my Kindle, because I was reading it on my Kindle at one point. I was, like, sobbing. I was, like, laughing. Every emotion that you could have, I had. Because, again, this is a childhood friends, two lovers, but it's not just as straightforward as that. There is a lot of twists and turns, and again, I like the aspect that it didn't just immediately, even though I was like, no, you need to be with this person, like, obviously that's who you should be with. Like, it doesn't just go there, and it becomes a situation of, when they get older, of Bennett telling Ruby that, like, they have feelings for each other, but Ruby, because her parents, like, their relationship is falling apart, she doesn't really, that's all she's seen, and she, like, doesn't want to risk losing Bennett as like, her friend, and she's like, I don't want to risk that, and so Bennett becomes heartbroken, and they end up, like, still becoming friends, but, like, they're both trying their best to move on, and then it becomes a situation, and I'm not ruining anything in this, but it becomes a situation where Bennett becomes engaged to another person, and it takes Ruby by, like, a slap to the face. She becomes, like, she's trying to be happy for Bennett, but she just, like, that's the love of her life, that's her best friend, and she's having a really hard time, and also Bennett is trying really hard just to, like, he's following what Ruby said in the fact that she doesn't want to get married, and he does, and he's just trying to, like, keep her as a best friend because he doesn't want to lose her, while also dealing with the fact that he does have feelings for her that he's trying to, like, bury. And it's a really, really good book, and there is spice. There's not too much spice in this book. This is a longer book, but I do have to say that this was the ending to the overall series, and if you want the full, like, punch that this book gives with this couple, I would recommend reading from the beginning, because this is one, you see them not as a couple, but you see their relationship throughout the book. And so, like, in one of the books, I believe it's the third book, Bennett announces that he's getting married, and it is like, it's not just a slap to the face to Ruby, it's like a slap to the face to the reader, because you're like, wait a minute, whoa. And I just really like the fact that this was like a childhood to lovers to almost like they become strangers almost. And this is a ride, and this is like over the span of years, and I just really liked Bennett as he's like probably my top book boyfriend, which is which is saying. I really liked Ruby. She like reminded me of myself in the like soft spoken, and she has like her close group of friends, and she doesn't like to branch out a lot, and she keeps to herself. She's reserved. She like keeps, really liked this character. Like, these characters are so close to my heart. I don't know if I could ever like, oh gosh, they're just so special to me. They mean the world to me. And I know it sounds really weird talking about like a book characters, but their relationship through the span of them going through it is just really, like I said, it's heart-wrenching. It's like you're watching it from like a distance, even though knowing that they should be together, and just the whole time you're just like, it just is, it's such a good book, and I definitely recommend reading this. Like, you do not have to read the other books if you don't want to, but I would recommend, again, if you want the full punch, to read this book. It's so good. But again, you do not have to read this, but it's a really, really, really good book, and I recommend reading it. And Julie Olivia is like the queen of writing romance, and I love it. It was such a good book. So that's all I have for you guys today. I'm pretty sure a lot of my discussions of these books were all over the place. I'm still getting used to like talking, a little bit more coherently about books, because I don't do it very often. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope you guys are all having a fantastic Valentine's Day, no matter how you're celebrating it, whether it's, going out a date or being anti-Valentine's and, doing something at home, whatever floats your boat for today. But I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye! Rereading.